Thank you so much, Chairman, for the love you have towards me. Wakurugenzi hamjambo. My apology, I overslept. I think the bed was so sweet for me, which is quite unusual. But I'm sound and fine and sound. With the powers the chair has given to me, after greeting you, then I welcome the facilitator, our brother Nyoro, to come on the stage.
Asante sana, the Vice Chair, for the invitation on stage. Now that we were together yesterday, there isn't much ado in terms of protocol. Sasa ni kuwasalimia hamjambo. Melala vizuri. Sijui kama kunao wanatamani tungekuwa na siku 5. Nafikiri mmoja wao atakuwa vice, sababu ashalala kufikia. Yeah, and I want to appreciate KETSA for bringing us to a good environment. One of the things that I like about this place is that if you want quietness, you will find it. But if you also want a place where you can also enjoy a little bit noise without going very far, it is within proximity. And the best day is always Friday. And today is it's a Friday. So I am also tempted to hang around and see how you're going to manage your Friday. But unfortunately, I have to get back to Mombasa today. Yeah, I want to appreciate the Secretary for knowing how to identify talent. And you can see the talent you identified has not failed you in terms of income. So when zero, it is true that you are present. We are not having homesick. You are very far from home. So it is evident that you are in attendance. But I want to find out whether there could be a person who picked something from yesterday's discourse, especially on the metrics, that you'd want us to revisit just in a small way. Maybe you think it is an area of concern, because what Wanakidiji was doing is to help us appreciate what our numbers tell the problem. And he kept on insisting that the information that he was sharing with us is actually out there. If we were to have very rational investors, what message do they get from the numbers we publish? That is the gist of the discussion. Sometimes when it gets now close and candid, you actually get to see areas that can upset your institution. And I believe that is what Ivy here will be trying to further in terms of, we got what we can consider to be a snapshot. If we were to dive deeper, what else does it reveal? So anybody who wants to make a comment about those numbers or even ask a question? Yes. When Siddharth is here, I can give you the mic. Today I want us to be more engaging.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I want to ask you this question.
Yes.
Not as a consultant.
Yes.
Now, as a regulator.
Okay.
Now, when I asked him yesterday,
yes,
we were talking about the 500 shillings. Now, the point there was refunding the members.
Yes.
Share capital.
Yes.
Then increasing the payment.
Yeah.
Now, the regulation question, is that one correct?
Okay. Yeah, so it is true. And by the way, even before the regulator came, those of us who have led the Cooperative Service Act, there is something we call the Capital Redemption Reserve. Capital Redemption Reserve. It is a reserve you create in anticipation that you could buy back the shares of the members. Now, for that to happen now under the regulation 2010, you need to secure approval. There are certain conditions that must exist, and these are the conditions. If you can borrow also from your accounting, even those companies that issue redeemable shares, there are certain conditions that you must meet if you have to redeem them. So you must have enough cash. So what happens is that when you buy back the shareholding, you redeem them from the Capital Redemption Reserve. And it's not provided. When we were drafting the cooperative bill, I was lucky to be involved early last year in Kisumu. We didn't want to operationalize that aspect of buying back the shares. And when the rules will come out, they should speak to how the practical approach to that. But let's come to the rationale. Every money you attract has what we call the carrying cost. Again, those who are accountants used to call it KE, the carrying cost. You have what we call the pecking order of how you finance your business. The best way to finance your business is using the institutional capital. It is literally free money. So the institution being quoted has built core capital, institutional capital of close to 20 billion, free money. They start now rationalizing the cost of carrying share capital, and they start to feel like it's a very expensive way of financing their business. You start to tempt people, the shareholders, to come for their money. Why? It is expensive to carry. Remember, there's something you are trying to avoid. You are avoiding a scenario where you have been paying dividend at the rate of 18%, and now you reduce it. That is what we call the signaling theory. When you start reducing the return to investor, you start sending the wrong message, isn't it? So, which would be another strategy for reducing that? You can start tempting them to come for their money. So that is the rationale. The journey is regulated. So that is the approach. But you can start seeing how certain decisions could have long-term effect. And I think that is what Kidiji was trying to bring out. If you increase the cost of the fund you have, at one point you will struggle with it. And sometimes it could be so heavy. If you are not lucky that you can liquidate it, you can recall it, then it means you might make other decisions that could impair even the image of the institution. So a good point, I can see that one captivated you. Any other comment? Yes, very good, very good. And this is now the art of learning.
Yes. What I picked from CPA is from the numbers. When I was going through the snapshot of the numbers he gave on NPR, and according to me, those were SACCOs that were a bit doing well. But that was a reflection on the monies that we have given out that are not coming back to our institution. In fact, to me, this one, we must put more effort on the recovery, I realized almost all of us are not doing very well when it comes to recovery. So which means we are giving out money that we are not getting back. And this one, if you are not careful, it is what's going to beat us up. That is what I do.
Very well. Again, very critical area of analysis in terms of business performance. When the chief guest was here, he talked about asset quality as a critical aspect about the performance of your institution. If you are to think about which is the largest asset most of us, all of us carry, it is the loan book. You need to keep an eye on the quality of that loan book. Now, when you go to the analysis, you will see how SACCO has classified the health of our loan book. So for the bank, we are told it is getting to 16.7. That is an average. So it means that there are people who are higher, there are people who have really mainstreamed the credit management department. The biggest effort you will find is also in recovery. If we want to go to what is the effect of an unperforming loan book, the best experience or the best example you bring to the floor is the National Bank of Kenya. And remember what the then CBK governor said. He said, no financial institution can stand on its own if its loan book is heavily impaired. At that time, the NPL for National Bank was slightly above 50%. It being taken by KCB was more or less a regulatory resolution. Simply put, not to allow the bank to collapse under the weight of its bad book. Let's do it by giving it to KCB. And I can bet the biggest effort that KCB did was to restructure the loan book. And you can look at many other decisions. If you think about the decision between Bank and Jamii and go ask what is the focus of the bank in the kingdom, you will see the effort is simply restore the loan book. Now similarly, for us as financial institution, effort must be put in the area of maintaining a very high quality of the loan book. And I want to ask you, yesterday we were talking about the past date, isn't it? The past date of your business. Irrespective of what rate you report, how would you know that your asset code loan is impaired? Irrespective of what the dashboard tells you, how would you know that you have a problem with the health of the loan book?
Thank you. Maybe one indicator I'm thinking of is concentration reason. That yes, your dashboard is saying your PR is okay, but when you delve deeper into the people who were given loans, you find it is skewed in one category of members that you have not diversified. I think that's the risk.
Okay, well, you could say that, and I agree. You have the concentration. You discover that your portfolio is not distributed. Either it is one institution, or you have very high few borrowers, and maybe they could even be in the same rate. I agree that could be further analysis of the inherent risk or the potential risk. But I'm looking at everything is saying you are okay in terms of the dashboard. The PAR is 1%. But there are other variables about the loan book that if you look at them, if they are not consistent with what your PAR is saying, they should be used, they should help you to analyze that PAR further. So that is what I'm looking at. What are the other variable analysis you do to say this reporting is consistent. CPA Joyce here has a hand up. Yes.
If you notice that, for example, the rate at which you are receiving the repayments is a bit, though the donors are paying, they are paying at a sparing rate.
Very good. There is a natural figure you would expect from a certain level of portfolio. So if you discover that the portfolio that is out there does not match very well with the inflows, how much you are receiving, that should help you say, why am I seeing inconsistency? Because for every portfolio, based on the terms, there is an expected amount of cash flow it should generate. So if you see a very high portfolio generating very little cash flow, you may want to check what is this inconsistency all about. What else? Let me give another one. You have a loan book to deposit ratio that appears healthy. Loan book to deposit ratio that appears healthy, but you don't have cash. That again should be a pointer to the fact that whatever the dashboard they say, you have a problem. Yeah. So there are many things that could help you. The more you understand your business, the better you become in guiding it, and more particularly for us board members and CEO in providing oversight. So I think you can see there is so much to discuss from yesterday's discussion, and you have brought a very good. Yes, that you want to make another rider here. I don't want my class to be on this side.
Now, I'm looking at, we are talking of the comparison of the banks and performing loans, we are talking of 16%. Now, this is a report I received from Sacco last week, which is giving the performance of 2024 for all Saccos. Now, it's talking of NPL was 5.76. Does it mean that the Saccos are doing good?
Okay.
Especially regulated Saccos.
Yeah, it could mean so. Again, Satellis Paribas, holding all things constant. One, the accuracy of that data. Assuming that data is accurate, then we can infer, we can make that conclusion that the Saccos could be doing better. Now, away from average, you may want to look at your case scenario. So are you above or below that amount? But it's a very good parameter of discussion. If I was talking to you as investors and talk to you in terms of asset quality, this is what I'll tell you. If you take your money to an institution whose asset is impaired, your money could as well sink in that asset. And I'll give you a practical experience. I was invited by an institution to go and promote a very innovative product they had come up with. I always remember this to be one of the knowledge is very useful. They were launching a product that they were giving 22% return to every investor. It was supposed to be called, I hide the Sacco, so if I want to use the Sacco of Sitati, it was supposed to be dubbed Taba Sam Fund. 22% return on the deposit. It was supposed to be more or less a money market instrument. At that particular time, the treasury bill was giving below 2 digits, so oscillating between 8 to 9%. Meaning, this investment was very lucrative, far from what you could get from the treasury bill. The money market, heavily informed by the benchmark, was oscillating between 10 to 11 points. Again, an investment very far. The return was far from what you could get from the money market. So anybody who wants their money to earn, that was the place to take their money. That particular time, the interest from bank in terms of borrowing for a corporate like this would move between 13%, and I give it even a wide range to 18%. Meaning, borrowing from the commercial banks was still cheaper. So you pose the question, why do you want to pay heavily to get money from the public? What will be your guess? Yeah? Sorry? You have a financial, you are actually in a financial distress. And I declined the invitation to be the one pitching for that product. And I said, when I look at all variables, you look like you do better by borrowing. But the thing is, they had borrowed everywhere. And they were not servicing. So the only place that was available is borrowing from the public in form of those instruments. It didn't take 1 year before the institution crumbled. And I felt very good that I did not participate in the discourse. The offer was good. So that time I had borrowed the spirit of Bishop Munuve. So that I did not succumb. Now, I want us to take a journey on the corporate governance of our institutions. I don't know what role KETSA has given itself in terms of corporate governance. And so I first of all speak to us as a family that the happening in one member of your family has far-reaching implication into how you are perceived as a family. If there is something that we must guard as a family, is how the public sees you. The public might find it very difficult to filter data coming from mental and separating it from information coming from IG. Conscious of that fact then, you start taking corporate governance as a collective responsibility. And you put the come up with a code of conduct for all of us. What is acceptable as far as our family members is concerned? Now, is it possible also to have analysis that helps you identify distress in an institution? Because of your connectiveness, and I know when we're now discussing during the plenary, after we do plenary, we'll be looking at what we call the contagion effect or the domino effect. The happening in your neighbor having the same impact in your own household or institution. So how is it within your mandate choice to identify distress into some of the family members? If you identify distress, what call to action do you take? Do you ignore? Now I want us to go back to our families, because all of us come from families. Kuna yule kijana mzuri na msichana mzuri. Kuna yule mwenye ana struggle kidogo, lakini tumeamua ni maisha yake. Maisha yake. Maisha yake. Now, whereas in the families you could be forgiven and some people could say, well, hata unaweza kaa kila wakati ukiambia neighbors, na huyu tukijaribu kumsaidia tukashindwa. Would you want to take the same approach in your in the family members' Bishop Olo? Or would you be spiritual and say, we are going to leave this life, go look for the one. So is it within your aspiration that no member institution here will suffer when you are there. There's something that Imarika is trying to do, and allow me, Chairman, to share. Providing resolution. When you saw the analysis that are being done here, you saw a society that has a PAR of 90 something. Now, you know what that means, isn't it? It simply means that that institution cannot stand. Do you wait for it to die, Chairman? Do you rescue it? And the attempt by Imarika is to say, well, before they close shop, can we do an amicable resolution? When we were developing the cooperative bill once more, we started to think through a number of things. One was compulsory acquisition. In the thinking of compulsory acquisition was that if you get to a certain level and it is evident you may not stand on your own, you are handed over. I know Secretary would have a different thinking because of the turnaround strategy for Kabasudi. You were almost at that point where a regulator would say, we had you, but we don't have many magicians like you people. Where is Director Digo? We don't have many magicians like you. So at what point do you now make a decision? From a regulatory point of view, this now should not be left to fail, because failure in the industry is so painful. You saw what happened, was it in the year 2014, 2015, when a number of banks failed? And when investors could analyze, they would see the banks that were failing were the small banks. They formed an opinion, we call it the investor sentiment. They formed an opinion, there's a problem with the small banks. And they created what we call fright for safety. Take your money from the small banks and take it to the big bank. But you see, that could have been preempted if there were early resolutions. So that is a thought, and I hope that when the regulations now come out, it will be clear in terms of at what point, at what stage does the regulator decide you can't operate beyond this point. But the regulator still says we are not going to allow any society to sink, because that has far-reaching implications. And two, how do you make mergers and acquisitions easy? How do you make mergers and acquisition easy? Because even now there is still a provision in the Cooperative Act that invites the two merging societies to dissolve. That is not tenable. I am happy in the past we have operated under the face of exemption, but I think now we can make it more feasible so that even two strong institutions can merge. That possibility is also a journey we may want to take today. Now, those are aspects that again KETSA can think through and see how do you detect and handle distress within the members of the family. So we are looking at corporate governance because it is one of the critical aspects that determines resilience, growth, and sustainability of institutions. And we start by saying corporate governance is a hygiene factor. Corporate governance is a hygiene factor. And I want us to pause there to give meaning to that statement. Corporate governance is a hygiene factor. I don't know who can decompose. How have we designed our governance in a manner that guarantees success? But I am still coming even to the very basic, looking at it as a hygiene factor. When COVID came, our hygiene factors went up. Do you remember? We understood that washing our hands is so connected to the probability that you could catch it. But then, are you still washing your hands? Oh, but you regressed. So, hygiene became a preventive measure to catching the COVID. Now, if I was to borrow from management, there's a gentleman called Hasberg who came up with something we call the two-factor theory. And he argued, in an institution, there are things we call dissatisfiers and motivators. And he looked at dissatisfiers as things that must be present. They do not contribute to any motivation, but if they are absent, they lead to dissatisfaction. And he said, provide them. That doesn't mean that the employees will always be happy, but at least they will not be dissatisfied. Then you start working on the motivation. So in other words, he's saying is the bare minimum for a functional organization, the hygiene factor. When you're discussing in your boardrooms, you may want to discuss this concept of the hygiene factors, the governance hygiene. What are some of the bare minimums that we must entrench? And this is the reason. Before investors engage with your institution, which is the topmost question they ask? The topmost question. The topmost question. They think what? Well, now those are the hygienes, like the policies. But the investor may not even ask you for the policies. But they have your members been asking you about the policies. Have they been asking you whether you have a risk management framework? Do they even know that those things exist? So what is it that they're interested in? They are interested in the safety of their money. In fact, they keep on thinking about how safe is their money. And if they get any note, any indication, any cue that this money is not safe, you will see it in their behaviors. So this is some of the parameters you could use to assess what is the member feeling about their money, the safety of their money. Number one, their saving behavior. And I invite you to be doing analysis. I can see that here. Do analysis of how do your members save in the society. Then at the you are coming from talking to super savers. People who have put their money in the institution and they now trust that their money, one, is safe, it will work for them. But do you know from where they sit? They keep looking for signs, anything that will tell them otherwise. And they want assurance about the safety of their money. So look at how your members save. Look at how your members save. I don't know the highest member in the country has saved how much? I think that Mwalimu would know.
There is a forum I had close to around 300 million.
300 million. The highest saver in the country has approximately 300 million. One institution, in one institution. Certainly, that is a statement, isn't it? That's a statement. And you may want to start thinking about what does it take to attract such kind of members? What does it take? Because now, that is the bigger game. This game that Bishop was talking about, of pitching tent, you have seen matatu industry. Matatu industry, unakuja kwa stage, unasimamisha gari yako hapa. Huyo mwingine, magari ingine anakuja anasimama nje ya mlango. don't need those practices. We can start thinking of higher business. There is a person who has that kind of money within the cooperative movement, 300 million. What is it that these institutions have told them that they believe their money is? And I will not be surprised. This person may not have borrowed as much. So you look at the trade of the members. You could even go to the FOSA and see how much your customers interact with the FOSA. Another thing is look at their behavior when they borrow. You borrow 5 million, you withdraw it the same day. 5 million, the same day, has left the Sacco. What is that member saying? As much as you are the one who has given me money, I still don't trust you. I don't trust you that much. And there could be many factors that are attended to that behavior. One of it is what we have said. They may not be trusting the institution in totality. Another one is that they may not be trusting the processes. Like, for example, they start to ask, how easy is it to access this money? How easy is it to access this money? So this member has a project he or she is running with 5 million. And the member is going to take him or her 7 months, 8 months, 1 year. But he takes the money the same day you give it. That is a statement. Do you analyze those behaviors and then draw inference or meaning from those kind of events? The hygiene factor is something critical to keep thinking about. So it is the hygiene factor that enables you to attract customers. Then from there you motivate them by other things that you do. So corporate governance is a sine qua non. So again, I want us to put the meaning of the term sine qua non. Go to technology. Sine qua non. Nani ameipata? Chairman?
An essential condition. I think that is absolutely necessary.
Okay. But we can stop there. This is the beta version. A thing that is absolutely necessary, without which organizations cannot thrive. Organizations cannot withstand. And I know as we continue looking at now case studies, you agree with me, no organization can survive bad governance. In fact, organizations can survive market turbulence, but fail to survive poor governance. I do not intend to look at this. Was a punchline from yesterday's, what we call the 6 B's of building because of it. Let me bring this quote, and I know those of us we have interacted with, because this is one of the quotes I like. It's a quote by Warren Buffett when he said that only when the tide goes out, you discover who has been swimming naked. So I want us to give meaning to this statement. When the tide goes out, you discover who has been swimming naked. Now, Warren Buffett had a very interesting, and even today, every time when he's preparing to go for general meetings, he prepares what he refers to as the shareholders letters. And you will access these letters. These letters are available. At this particular time, there was a lot of push, is what we call the shareholder supremacy. A lot of push demanding for more return by the shareholders. And the shareholders would give him examples of how much other institutions are paying, how much other institutions are paying. So that particular meeting, he went to talk to the investors, to tell them, this is what he told them. Only when the tide goes out, you discover who has been swimming naked. So what do you think about that? What do you think about it? What do you think about it? Eunice, I can see you want to make a comment. Eunice is here. Eunice, Director Eunice. Angalia mikono ya jiko juu. Hapo. When the tide goes out,
when things go bad, you realize that how things have been there.
When things go bad.
Things have not been really good, though they were pretending to be.
Okay, I think I can put it in a better way. That when things go bad, ultimately, is when you discover, by the way, that was not the only day. This thing has been smoldering. This thing has been happening over the years. It is only that now time has caught up, because you cannot lie forever as an organization. In fact, I used to say that many organizations get away with sins until when something changes and expose the organization. So that brings me to us discussing the concept called organization decay. So I want you to identify a case study of your choice and discuss the common characteristics of organization decay. So first of all, give it meaning, then find an organization you'd love to analyze, see whether it helps you see what are some of the common features that are present when an organization is decaying from within. They may not be apparent to the public, but when on retrospect, or if you have a hook-eyed person, you'll be able to see, you'll be able to notice. So make your neighbor your group. Make your neighbor your group. You can even have more than one neighbor. Discuss the concept of organization decay. Then pick a case study. Discuss the common. So let's start from the basic. What is your understanding of the concept of organization decay? What does it speak to you? Organization decay. Organization decay.
On my thinking, I think organization decay is when the organization is deteriorating in terms of
performance of that organization, and he feels it is when the numbers now are now speaking otherwise. So you start seeing a lot of loss in terms of the business. So he looks at that as an organization decay, and it will be interesting to see whether that is a resultant of organization decay or whether it is the real organization decay. Could it be that there is another reason, the root cause, another factor that drives that outcome? Okay, another way of looking at organizational decay? Oh yes, very good, very good. Director Zero.
Thank you. I think with me, I'll just sum up with two words.
Yes.
Mismanagement of the organization by the leaders who are running it.
Mismanagement, the organization by the leaders who are handling it. And I think I like the way you have put it at a very high level. Organization decay starts to happen when the people at the top fail to take care of the organization. Okay? And you place the leadership at a very strategic level in causing organization decay. And I agree with you, because we normally talk about the tone set at the top. Can we say this? One of the predictor of organization behavior, organization decay, is the conduct of the people at the top. When they start losing it, then it will slowly cripple down, 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 and then that becomes the organization behavior. And so when they did start losing, it started losing when the leadership lost it. It may take time to reach to the, is it through osmosis or through division? That the behavior, the bad behavior started from the top. It took 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, but it has now become the organization behavior. One more, there is what we call the power of 3. The power of 3. That one can come from me. Simply mean when the organization starts to waste from within. The collapse of the value system of an organization is a critical example of organization decay. So how does it manifest? What are some of the things that when you see, you start to feel this organization is decaying from within? I don't know who has woken up one day and you discover that there are very many bananas that have fallen in the farm. When you were those who farm through bananas, unaamuka siku moja, there was like a small weed that grew. When you go check, you discover madizi, miti yote ya madizi kama inaweza itwa miti, imeanguka. When you go checking, you discover that many of them ilikuwa imeoza ndani. Meaning it just waited for a small trigger and that weakness from inside manifest. So these are some of the things that could be indicators of organization decay. Now this is where Zero started, leadership and governance issues. When you talk about leadership and governance issues, there are very many things that you may want to pick, very, very many things. And you could draw a very long list of what is it that could culminate into decay from that just one area. Number 2 is possibly even high technical, but it is still part of it. Failure to adapt to changing external conditions, decline in employee motivation and engagement. And this is something that I also invite you to be monitoring, to be providing oversight. That it could be speaking to a very serious trouble you have from within. Sometimes, we do not see the correlation between motivation and good governance, but one of the most vulnerable members of staff who could defraud your organization is a demotivated member of staff. That is like a sniper waiting for an opportunity. And if they are many, they will conspire. And they will break, they will cut, they will shortchange the internal control system. Especially if they are within the value chain of a process which they can initiate and finish. Like for example, lending, isn't it? So those are serious people and they can affect the organization. Inefficiencies in processes, cultural decay, financial mismanagement and corruption, lack of accountability and transparency, and strategic mismanagement. Simply saying, the organization starts losing direction of where it should be going. So I will not belabor this discussion of the definition of corporate governance, but I will bring a case study that will speak to it. I will also not belabor this definition of corporate governance as an aspect of processes, policies, and structure, but I'll possibly create a case study that will bring about it. Now, yesterday the chief guest made a comment about a management structure and its functionality. One way through which you start to see an organization that is losing it is when the structure fails to function. When there are overlaps, when there is no role clarity of each and every function, when there is conflict even in this structure, and when the structure creates unnecessary inefficiencies because of maybe the bureaucracy and the like, you create an organization that is not very agile. So I want to pick this as a case study, use it possibly to advance from far, then I come home. There's a time I had a sitting with the board of Imarika, and I was telling them a challenge that was thrown to me. And the challenge is, why do you like examples from far? Why do you go to America to bring us examples? And I told them because they are safe. So when I speak about this organization, they may not catch up with me. But when I speak about your organization, Chair, unaweza nishika mashati hapa, take issues. So I find comfort. But today, we'll see whether we can come closer home. But let's start from far. But something very interesting you will see is that what creates failure, it doesn't matter whether it is happening in America, it doesn't matter whether it is happening in Uganda. If it happens in your organization, it will also create failure. Note, if it is academicians, professors, those who are the board members. In fact, we'll even go further to try and find out. Can I digress a little? We have very many learning institutions. Some are not here with us. There's a doctor in the room, so you allow me to speak his language. But we'll be having a diminishing return on education in terms of productivity. That doesn't follow that as you go far, you create the same institutions that look like the papers. We will still be following to see whether that can be studied. Now, this organization had the caliber of those board members that I have mentioned, very renowned. When it started as a gas company, it was moving very fast and very innovative. Every time they would go into the market and get an idea, they would come and open a special purpose vehicle. So they would see, for example, that there is making of cables. They come home and say, we also need to start making cables. So they would register a company. Every company they would register, they would take it to the security market of New York. Every company they register, they take it to the security market of New York. They became what we call a conglomerate, doing everything that you may think about. They will go to areas they have competence and areas they don't have competence. Then they will be very keen studying the behavior of their stock in the market. If they discover that their share price is dropping, they will go there and buy those shares. And once they have bought them, they will create what we call force demand for shares. And then they will return them the following after some time, when the price has gone up. They will prepare financial statement based on who they are targeting. So if they are targeting the regulators, the tax man, they will depress the profitability. When they are targeting strategic investors, they will excite the profit. So they had adopted something we call creative accounting. They had one of the renowned authors, not authors but auditors, called Anna Anderson, AA. But Anna Anderson was also doing consultancy work with this company. In fact, on retrospect, it was seen the auditor was doing 70% business with the company. Only 30% of his revenue from the company was coming from audit. So what do you think was his focus? The consultancy, not audit. He had lost a critical aspect about an auditor called independence. And so he was not useful to the business. We can say very many things about that. Ask yourself, with the caliber of the board that I have mentioned, is it that they didn't detect some of these ills that were happening? So what are some of the things that we learned from this company? Number one, the unchecked insider trading. Very conflicted space. One of the reasons why insiders lose their power to question is when they have personal insider engagement that are not above board, that are not at arm's length. When that happens, you start losing your audacity, your morality, to question failure. Many a times you are invited, you are part of the failure. You are part of the failure. Number two, the need for effective oversight. Ask me one role of the board, and I'll tell you it is oversight. So for the board to provide oversight, they need to be independent. How do you enhance the independence of the board? By simply removing them from operations. Allowing the board to sit there and supervise and oversight how things are done. But also build their capacity. Yesterday we were saying, build their capacity to understand the possibility of their business. The auditors. We have an example very close to when we'll be looking at it, of an auditor who performed the same way he performed. When alive or dead, they appeared like there was no difference. He gave the same result. When dead, he gave bad result. When alive, he gave the same result. And I don't know how you go about recruitment, appointment of your auditor. And as you get to those higher levels, you now start becoming keen as to who is your auditor. In fact, the higher you go as an entity, you continue shedding off certain caliber of auditors. You start saying, I think now, and you know, we had, and I think allowed me to use, because it's very close to me, the chairman of America. One time, he was invited as a chief guest in one of the SACCOs, and he found them struggling with appointment of auditor. According to the delegate, an auditor is good if he could finish the book by 15th of January. Do you get the same experiences? If the auditor could finish the book by 15th of January, so that 17th, you declare dividends. That's a very good auditor. And I think you must have been struggling with him. What is it that you people are discussing? Then he said, for us, now we have understood. When you just throw a tender out there, there are certain level of auditors who will not come. When you become serious that you want to be audited by a certain caliber of auditors, you go to them. The fact that you have put in the papers, they will not apply. You go to them. It is at that time we are now saying, we want somebody to come and look at how we have been doing our things. Because that is the value they create. The regulators are very, very critical component. And we pray and trust that our regulators will continue doing their job in a professional manner. Because when they fail to question us on certain aspects, they encourage us not to raise our standards. I hope they challenge us without necessarily pinning us, but they do not relent on raising the standard. And of course, the delegate. I don't know how much. Many of us, how many of us are on a delegate system? Not actually, the Marine National, yes. Quite a number of us. That organ allow it to do its job. Let them challenge you. let them question. I know a number of us, we have also served as delegates of other institutions, isn't it? You know the outcome of a delegate system that does not discharge its oversight role. Things will go bad as watch. So make sure that these people do their job. Actually empower them. Empower them so that they can look at the financial statement and ask the right question. I want to admit, I have participated in the training of delegates of quite a number of institutions in this country. And for those that we have walked a long journey, I remember the questions they used to ask. And today, I listen to the questions they ask, and I see growth. You see the way you train a kid, ulikapata kakiwa bado, akajaliwa kuongea vizuri. Umekuwa na yeye, utafika mahali unaona sasa huyu, this kid is destined for far. There's one, my teacher is here, Director Nyoro. Oh yes, he's here, yes, Director Nyoro. Now, seeing these growth, you can give a testimony because here in class 4 or class 3. Walking with me now today, you can see when the delegates are growing. And one of the things you listen to is the kind of questions they raise, their engagement level. And you can tell when you have polished them and they add value. Encourage them to do their job. I will not go to the ethical rewards. Number 4, creative accounting and the failure of both internal and external auditors. Once more, I propose to you, let the internal auditor thrive. Give him or her space, empower them. They do the job for you. They are your eyes. I would rather you allow them to tell you and you do nothing. Just allow them to tell you, then say, okay, you must clear. Need for strong regulations and regulators and constant reforms. And I think even a regulator who does not evolve fails to create value because things keep on changing. Number 6 is your commitment. A commitment to ethical behaviors. And of course, number 8 is need to moderate investors, shareholders. So let me ask you now, having looked at the issues I have raised, do you think this case study is falling? Is this a falling case study? Or there is a way in which you can see similarities in how sometimes our own organizations behave? That it could look like it is a far off case study. So allow me to take a risk and look at the lessons we will forever draw from the union. In fact, for me, if I am going to write a book or a journal, and now that the leadership of the union is here, we would agree that these are some of the lessons we will draw and learn from it. Number 1 is that no single organization can survive bad governance for all. You can survive year 1, year 2, year 3, if you are strong, year 4. If you have a way of cushioning yourself, year 5, but one time, the tide will be out. And you will discover that you have been swimming naked. So when you see signs of bad governance, do not allow them to go for too long, not correct it. They will expose you. They will expose you sometime. Number 2, when you choose to reward the wrong things, especially when you fail to reward meritocracy. Yesterday we talked about how Singapore was transformed. Do you remember? And we said 3 letters: M, P, H. And we said M stood for meritocracy. merit, make sure even in your placement, overcome the the traps that comes to decision makers. I was looking at the list of PSs and the appointments that were done yesterday. And for some reason I was happy. I was not happy because I am in a broad-based government. I was happy because I could see the credentials of the people and their president. And I thought to myself, I think this is a contribution of the experts joining the government. But really, depending with who you give a serious job, the expectations will also be, you can almost predict what is the expectation. And we had a very interesting conversation, and I don't know whether this affects you sometime. I know balancing is a very important thing. But I was in a very serious institution, an institution that makes money. Luckily, it is not a Sacco, but still within the cooperative sphere. And they said, when we look at the manager of this organization, he comes from this section within our operation. So what then you do, the next person should come from this other section. So you can say, I don't know whether, I know it is possible for you to get the right people even in a village. That one I don't dispute. But what would be the most important decision to consider? I thought it should be meritocracy. And organizations grow when they rise above, small issues to where now we say we are hiring for talent, we are hiring for competence, we are rewarding talent and competence. Number 3, patronage versus independence. And sometimes these things do not look like they really matter. But when you start looking at how decisions are made, you start feeling that there is a strong domination of patronage than independent thinking. And that even what is promoted is that patronage that does not necessarily ask the right question and does not create an environment where independent thinking is allowed. Number 4 is failure of oversight. We almost got to ask this simple question: who exactly regulates the union? Now, oversight could fail because of many things. It could fail because the structures are no longer working. The board has a responsibility to provide oversight, and they provide it. There's an extent to which also management provides oversight, and they provide it. The delegates are supposed to provide oversight, and they provide it. The members are also supposed to provide oversight. So when you see those structures fail, you could, create an environment where checks and balances are lost. Number 5 is called the big man. Big man syndrome. I choose not to discuss the big man syndrome, but simply put it this way: no organization can protect around an individual. And I like the way you keep chairman. You keep bringing the new faces. Yesterday, I did understand a lot of Kiduya, although I stayed with them for some time. I could go back and see whether the beautiful ladies are still there. And, but you could be speaking to, there is a future after me. I am not the only genius surrounded by gods. So you keep promoting, that independent thing. The ethical business behavior.
Through a very, very important journey as governance is concerned, I really want to appreciate. You are asking us, why are you quiet? We are not quiet, only that we are not talking. But we were busy talking to ourselves in our hearts. We are doing introspection. And indeed, you are really speaking to our hearts. I don't want to say much because it is a true gospel and it's gospel truth that you are speaking today. I don't think if we can give a contrary opinion to what you are alluding to, and if I want to say and give it a name, the Nyoro concept of governance. Personally, I don't have a contrary opinion, only to agree to the sentiments put across. There is a conflict here that I wanted us to share on the function of management in procurement and board. From where I sit, this particular issue came the other day, and I think it brought some disquiet between board and management when it came to procurement, because now management said, board, stay away. This is a function of management. But you can see when things go south, the chairman will have to answer. And when things go, I don't want to mention what my brother is saying, Apa Nyuma, but when things go south, like a case in point, the KETSA, the chair was held responsible. Whether he said, you see, this was a function of management, you are told, but you know, you only dedicate, but you don't abdicate. So maybe you want to know, when do we dedicate? What do we dedicate? If we helped each other there, I think I'll be quite home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very generous position, and I know I picked something, then I come back to the question. It's Daudi.
Naam, ndugu yangu Nyoro, mimi sijui Kiingereza sana, lakini nilikuwa na haya
Ongea.
Unajua ni vibaya sana kama tutakongamana mahali alafu tufurahie sana kuongea maovu ya wenzetu. Kwa mfano, tupo mfano wa ndugu zetu wa Nyoro, wazungu. Wazungu bwana wanakuja mavi yananuka sana, tunakaa tunafurahi. Lakini hapo kando tuna shonde letu na sisi. Tunaliona lakini hatutaki kulitaja. Sasa mimi kwa ningekuomba katika hizi urudi pale kwa Edward kwambie kitu. Rudi hapo umetoa mfano wa Edward. Sasa ukisema lessons from hiyo Edward ukaondoa ukaweka Cusco hapo. Hiyo lessons from Edward hiyo unaondoa uweke Cusco. Hayo ndio mavi yetu. Tusiongea wazungu na mavi yetu tunayo. Asante.
Thank you. Nafikiri nitaanzia ya Daudi Dino kwa sababu hiyo ni ushauri, si ndio? Amenipa ushauri. Nafikiri hiyo ni ushauri nishapata tena. Nimesema juzi nilikuwa naongea na Imarika. I get challenged from time to time. Why do you fish? Why do you engage in what we call the fishing expedition? When all around you have enough examples. And I said, I'm afraid. So I think I'll continue summoning courage. But let me say this. Learn from the mistakes of others. You cannot live long enough to make all the mistakes. Two, agree to be vulnerable. Agree to be vulnerable. Chairman, I was surprised.
some of your struggles, if you share with these people, it will shock you how they will identify with them. Just siku hizi nimefika ile miaka yenye inakaribia mzee. Nakaribia karibu. Sasa naenda nakaa na watu wenye wanakaribia miaka yako, nafikiria mimi niko na challenge na nakwambia kile siku hizi nimelemewa. Mambo gani yanakusumbua? Sisi tulikubali. There is so much value that you can learn from the mistakes of others. Did you know we lose money in very similar ways? We lose money in very similar. Why we become easy target is because nobody wants to share their challenges and their vulnerabilities. So, Bishop, your Sacco gets attacked. Wanakuja kwa mentor where my father keeps his money, wana attack the same, because you people don't share. The moment you agree to be vulnerable, you discover that now the attackers must devise new ways. So even when we bring an example that is home, I remember one time when we were looking at a concept called loan to deposit ratio. I had to choreograph a situation because I can't expose myself to talk about life cases. But maybe if I talked about life cases, I would have been understood more. But you know, they say never annoy your audience. Never annoy your audience. You know, I don't want to annoy chairman. You know, chairman supports me in very many ways. Sasa kwa nini chairman ni cool? So acha nikutafutie mfano ya Amerika. Sasa wewe ukiwa mwerevu, angalia kama inafanana na I try as much as possible to remain within my lane. And even when I share a life case, it is to the extent that it is in the public domain. So it's not that I have done private investigations. It is that it is now well known and people can draw lessons. I took a man to Ebb one time to speak to employees of an organization about losing opportunities. It is one of the experiences I remember to date. So the institution told me, we don't want theory. Tuletee mtu mwenye maisha amechapa. Akuje sasa atuambie how things can go wrong if you do not take care of advantages and opportunities. And I thought around and I identified a man. This man, the only person who could get closer to knowing him in Mwalimu wangu, but I'll still not mention. And when he went to Ebb, he told them in 1961, 3 boys were born. 1961, 3 boys were born. One was born in Gatodo. The other one was born somewhere in America. The other one was born somewhere he mentioned his village. One became the president of America, Barack Obama. The other one became the president of Kenya. The third one is here to tell you about his story. And he shared his story to them. When he shared his story to them, he said, I do not read the Bible a lot, but when it was read to me, I heard that there was the rich man of Lazarus. Do you remember that rich man of Lazarus? The one who used to say, can't you send me back to go and speak to the people who are still alive? I tell them, work hard so that you do not come here. Then he was told, between where you are and where they are, there is a big gap. Then he said, okay, if it is that difficult, said the Lazarus, there is so much you could share. You could package your case studies and they become the lessons that we need to learn. They could become a very good book. Even how you make decisions, whether they are investment decisions, whether they are procurement decisions. I am sure there are board members who are here who would say, If we did not stop that procurement, we would have lost money. Do you have those examples? So, how have you prepared your procurement policy? How does it provide, what are the gaps, the checks and balances that you have created? Even assuming that there is no rule, you know the right things to be done. You know when the institution is getting value for its money. You know when the organization is losing. You also know when you have come too down to interfere with the process, isn't it? All these things we know. And that is why I agree with you that sometimes it is not about the mind, we call it the cognitive. It is about the affective domain. You have even policies that talks about management of conflict of all these things, we know them. So I don't think it is a blurred area. I have a feeling it is a space you could provide more guidelines and more policies without me looking like I am prescriptive. But you know when the institution, you know the checks and balances to put so that the organization gets value for its money. Whatever happens, the board cannot be exonerated from its oversight role. So how you structure that, I leave it to you. When I start. Remember,
you have told us either to challenge you, to criticize you. Sir, I critic. Now, I hope maybe in the future you will come up with a slide. Lessons from regulator. Now, you as a regulator, you are saying someone signed books, whether dead or alive. The person who is signing is on the list of auditors on the website of the commissioner. Isn't it? When this person prepared the books, filed the books with regulator, the same regulator was sitting on the board. So, what were the lessons from regulator?
Don't possibly even need a slide. I don't possibly need a new slide. You can see number 5. Number 5 is need for strong regulations, regulators, and constant reforms. And by the way, it may surprise you how many times regulators fail. It will surprise you. Not only financial regulators. Just think about buildings that have collapsed when they are under construction. Are there regulators? Remember the fire that embarked somewhere in Embakasi, the bursting of the gas cylinders. Are there regulators? So you can see we need serious regulators reform in all spheres. And by then, it is not even a Kenyan problem. We see it. Even possibly, even the collapse, the plane crashes, road, all these are failures of regulators. Do you know what is the major reason? No outsider can rescue the organization. No outsider can rescue the organization. After all, you can also corrupt a regulator. So you can see how much good governance is an organization decision. The people decide to provide good governance. But then, trust you me, all other peoples can miss to see, but you not miss to see. That's what I can assure you. Even when they don't see, you actually know they did see. Ikiwa kikosa hiki, iko na expect vita kama wationa hii. Atungesonga. So trust me, this is an inside job. I thank you.